Hi, good morning everyone. Back to Code Reboot Academy. Today we are going to see our next topic, which is called our last and final module, that is higher education. So we are going to see the what are the policies and what are the acts act and what are the benefits and how many levels of education and what are the contribution of the government towards the higher educations and many more features and benefits on the higher education provided by the India government and to our country. So we are going to see the different modules in the higher education. At first we are going to see the institution of higher education learning in from the Asian India, and next we are going to see the evaluation of higher education and the research. Then what is meant by oriental, conventional and non-conventional learning, and next we are going to see what are the professional, technical and skill-based education courses. So then we are going to see the value education and the environmental education, and next we are going to see the policies, governance and administration by the government for the education. So first we are going to see the institutions of the higher education. So here we have the list of benefits related to the higher education. So first, in the ancient time, our education is mainly based on six main theme, and it is the objectives of the higher educations in the ancient period. So our first thing is prevention of knowledge, that is preservation of knowledge and culture. So the knowledge should enhance the knowledge of the person in the social as well as in the cultural aspects. So he should not get out of the language or the society where he was, and it should give a knowledge about the culture of the person. So second thing is personality. So here the personality means it should give a development for a person physically as well as mentally, and a social responsible person also. So he should be justice, he should have a politeness, he should be honor, he should not have anger, he should know the merits and demerits of his karma and the work what he does. So the third thing is social awareness. The education should give a social awareness, what is good and what is bad and what he can do and what he should not do. And the fourth thing is self control. He should know how to behave with other people and person without harming or making them to get anger. And the fifth thing is character development. The character development is not basically the development of a person in the way he talks, in the way he speaks. It's also the main and the most important fact in the education. So character should be, he should have a discipline, punctuality, he should have able to judge the people in all the aspects. So propagation of purity. So it not only gives in the what to say the environmental works, but it also provide a purity in the anma and soul also. So next we are going to see our next thing is the ancient education is basically based on Vedas. So basically we have four Vedas: Rig, Aju, Sama and Atharvana. So Rig Veda is basically based on hums, and the Yaju Veda is basically based on Ayurvedic formulas and how the priest or the uh, what to say doctors in the long before periods, like the priests know how to use the ayurvedic medicines for the people. The Samaveda is formulated in the sung by Udar, and the fourth one is Advaita. So Advaita is a collection of spells, and it charms the homage of it. It is the mean of praising the Lord, and how what we heard can be implemented and manipulated. So as I said earlier, our first and the most uh, initial stage of our education is Gurukulam. So Gurukulam is basically based on Indian culture. According to Indian culture, the Gurukulam education will mainly focus on the discipline of a student and his culture and knowledge. There are many types of Gurukulam educations were established, but the basic of all the Gurukulam education is called as a Vedic age. So we always used to call the Gurukulam age as the Vedic age. The main motto is to develop the knowledge of the student. So the students here can be divided into three categories based on their age. So Vasu is the education provided till the age of 24. Rudra is the education obtained till 36, and Aditya is the education which is obtained up to 48 years. So next we are moving on to next we are going to see the three simple process in the ancient education system, that is based on the Gurukulam system. So here we have three process. First one is Sharvana, Ma, Manana and Nityasana. So basically what do you mean by Sharvana? So as I said earlier, the Savana is nothing but the process of learning things. So the teachers used to guide the students. They learn everything orally. They started to gain the knowledge through hearing or oral process. So they just hear their concept or a subject basically based on the oral knowledge which is dictated by the teacher. So Manana is basically analyzing the process what they heard already. So the Manana, the students will first analyze or realize the concept of the topic what they got or taught in the Sharvana process. So, Manana and Sarvana process is carried out to Nityasana. Here the students realize and they work on the process. So, it is basically like in the Sharvana, we started to hear the concept, started to listen the concept and we have the notes, and we'll next move on to Manana. Here we just analyze the concept and we have the brief understanding about the concept what we thought from Sharvana, and Nityasana is totally what we called as utilizing the knowledge and the analysis that is we got from Sharvana and Manana. So Nityasana is basically we just uh, implement or we make it real what we gain from the previous two processes. So next we are going to see the ancient institutions in India. So there are lots of ancient institutions has been established by our previous rulers and dynasties. Most of the ancient universities taught the Buddhism, and they have their knowledge or the subject or the research program is basically based on Sanskrit, and they started to spread Buddhism and Buddhist cultures throughout the world or country. So in India, we have in Taxila, which is a modern day of Pakistan. So these universities are established in the 5th century BC. So this university is believed that Chanakya has composed the Arthashastra in this place. So here we have both the students from Buddhist as well as from Hinduism. So here I have given you what are the subjects they taught here, and it is noted that most of the teachers and students are including the Chanakya, Chakrapani, and they both most probably belonging to the Buddhist communism or Jainist communism. So next we have the university called the Nalanda University, the most famous university in the South Asia. So this university is basically started or established in the earlier period of Gupta period, and they are mostly taught the Buddhist methodology of learning. So major site here is Mahayana Buddhist teaching. So here they mostly taught you the languages and the culture and the language and the teaching methodology of Buddhas. So here the most famous Chinese scholar IT Singh spent 10 years in the Nalanda University on the last 7th century. So next we are going to see is Vallabhai. So Vallabhai is in Surat. So this is also one of the major universities in which is from the ancient Indian periods. So they have most of the languages, and most of our university is basically based on the Buddhism. So here the Chinese scholar have visited and they have a lot of grand rules supported by the Gujarati dynasties also. So next is Vikramshilya. So this is a Behalpuri district. It is present in the Behalpuri district of Bihar. So this famous university was established by King Dharmapala of Pala dynasty. So basically this, as I said earlier, most of our universities are basically based on the rules and regulations and the propositions of the Buddhist and Jainist. So here also the most probably teaching language is Buddhism. So the next, we have the next university is Ottan, Ottantapuri. Ottantapuri is another university which is by also, this also established by Pala dynasties. So here they have nearly, these universities are not that much popular as the previous four university. Here we have only 1,000 students and monks all around. They, most of them are belonging to the Buddhism community. Then the next thing is Jagatala. This is was established by the same Pala kings and this was destroyed by Muslims in 1203 AD. So here the scholars are from various Tibetan peoples. They, most of the peoples are from Tibetan languages. Here, I wanted to mention you one thing that I've given you the list of universities. These are 16 universities. You just have a glance. You may have. I'm not sure that you are going to have a 1 mark in this question. So please, while preparing the notes or preparing the 1 marks, just note down the list of university names of university and where they are located and when they are established and who established the university. These are the main questions that you are going to get from this university list. So next thing is Mithila. So as I said earlier, the Mithila is a famous university for Sanskrit literature. So most of the Sanskrit literatures are born in this university. They thought in the maximum of their subjects are belonging to in the Sanskrit field. So Nadia is famous for formerly known as Navadip. Navdeep. So this university is located near the Ganga river in Bengal and most of these thought here is a tradition and the trade of commerce and the learning culture and in their environmental situation. So next we are going to see Kanchipuram University which is located in the Tamil Nadu, which was established by Pallavas. Here the languages and the method and culture which was proposed by the Jains, Buddhists and the Hinduism. So next is Manakichra is a Malkid. It also basically Hinduism and Muslim Hinduism and Jainism and Jainism, Buddhism and Hinduism Mishra Culture University. So Pushpagiri, Vihara and Latitagiri is in Odisha. So it is a 3rd century university. So maximum here it is established by Kalinga kings. So here is our next universities called Sharada Peeth. So Sharda Peeth is located at present in Pakistan. So it is occupying in near the Kashmir. This is also one of the older university which is also has the Sharada Devi temple with it. So Nagarjunakonda is which is near the Amaravati in Andhra Pradesh. So here the higher education is basically the scholars for this university is from Sri Lanka and China. And this was named after Nagarjuna, the South Indian scholar of Mahayana Buddhism. So he also belonging to the Mahayana Buddhism, as I said earlier in the Nalanda University. So next. Here we are going to see the evaluation of higher education and the research in the post-independent India. So how the educations are in the post-independent India. So after independence, our education system has changed a lot. So here the committees, what are the committees as made and how the education system has been improved. So here the first committee is from Shatkar Committee in 1945. So they have formed the Institute of Technology. Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the 4 regions of India. Then, as a result of this university, once the first and most in first what to say is the first university to rise after our independence is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which was formed with the help and the proposals of Sarkar Committee in 1945. Once the institution has established, with the help of this institution, five more institutions has arisen throughout India. So, the Indian Institute of Technology at Kanpur, Bombay, then Kanpur, Madras and Delhi, they have started the five institution as the continuation of the main university. So All India Commission for the Technical Education was set up in the 1945. So they look after the technical educations like diploma, skill development programs, degree, post-graduate programs, or professional programs. So and the next thing is these UEE. So UEC is a University Education Commission which was proposed by the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru with the chairperson as Dr. S. Radhakrishnan in 1948. So this commission was set up in 1953 for coordinating and development for the higher education. So the UGC, so the UGC has become the second party or the second main organization was the for the higher education, and it has been proposed as a main act on the parliament in 1956. So what I trying to say is you have to learn the name of committees and the year and who is the head of the committee for your 1 mark. So here I have given you the main committees. So just go through the committees and the year and what they have proposed. So next. So Nehruvian period is from, so the education principles and many other things which was proposed by Nehru for the development of higher education is known as the Nehruvian period, that is from 1947 to 1964. He focused mainly on the large scale industrialization for the growth of the higher technical institutions. So after Nehru, Indira Gandhi has taken over the higher education sector into a very focused level, and she has shifted the view into the poverty and the rural issues. So she has proposed the Kothari committee with the chairperson as D.S. Kothari in 1964. So for in the previous year question paper you had a committee name what is Kothari committee or what is the proposal by Indira Gandhi or the year they have mentioned, and you have to mention the answer Kothari committee. So you may have a questions from Kothari committee or from as I said from Sarkar committee. So you have to be clear with the year and the committees. So as I said earlier, there are lots of committees and the years. So what are the amendment they have given you and what is the improvement they have did in the education field? So they have given a lot of proposition. The 42nd amendment to the constitution has proposed that the education should be now should be as a joint responsibility of the state and the central government. So the planning commission was established in 1950 by Nehru, and it was ex officio by the 5 years plans. So here I have given you the 5 years plans of this committee. So the first 5 years, it is from 1951 to 1956. So here the proper funding and development for the quality of the education is given. The second committee, that is 1956 to 1961, here they have shifted the focus from agriculture to the manufacturing sectors, and they have provided the fundamentals for the research institution, and they have developed the education in the rural areas also. In 1961 to 1966, there is a rapid increase in the universities and colleges. They have approved many universities and research institutions for the further education under the guidance of UGC, and they have provided the larger facility for the students who are in a eager and an interest to pursue their research areas. In 1969 to 1974, there is a lot of uh, powers to strengthen the staffs and libraries, and they have provided a lot of library facility for the students in the classes and also in the universities. They have offered 88% of university students were helped because of the digital and the other and the other form of library books they got from the libraries. So in 1974 to 1978, there is a weaker section of society and the backward areas. They developed the peoples from those areas for the higher education. They have expanded the college timing to the evening colleges. They are raised for the utility of the evening colleges. They have given the proposals and they taught the evening colleges also. So in 1980 to 85, there is a low emphasis on expansion. So the greater quality of higher education priority has improved. The regulation of admission has been categorized. So there is a certain rules and regulation for each of the admission purposes. So then there is an inequality between the gender. So that inequality has been shorted out. So as I said earlier, there is a time period and they have a 5-year plan. I have given you the 5-year plan. What Nehru has proposed, these 5-year plans has been till now, it is made to be established throughout the country. So next, we have given the years and the proposition by the Indira Gandhi. So in 1986, she has proposed the 5 main goals for the education under the Kothari Commission. So this education is provided a greater opportunity for the people from rural areas. They also proposed the guidelines for the guidelines based on the gender equalities. In these proposal, which is proposed by Kothari Commission in 1986, has given a very huge impact on the inequalities on the gender. So it reduces the men and women ratio of learning. They have given a proper rights for the women to have their education. So education is a right. So everyone has the right to get the educations. So next, it is the summary of our education plan from 1986 to 2014. So here the 7th plan is very speedy and implemented with the Indira Gandhi National Open University. So here they have given an opportunity to learn from a distance and they provide a lot of research opportunity for the women also. There is a lot of opportunity for the women empowerment and for making the woman as a powerful character in the nation. So on the 8th plan 1992 to 1997, so there is a highlight that most of the weaker and the lack and the weaker area over the research area for the production of equipments or for the need of software where there is a no effect for the improvement of the education has been fulfilled. So here they have proposed the library called InflipNet. So this is an open library, so anyone can access the books with them from anywhere else also. So ninth commission, it is 1997 to 2002. Here they focus mainly on the problem what they are facing in the quality of the education. Here the quality of the education is enhanced and there is a system for the autonomous status also. So most of the colleges, around 10% of the colleges get the autonomous purpose to enhance the quality of education and the quality of subject what they are offering. So 10th commission is from 2002 to 2007. Here it is rise of the enrollment of higher education has been fixed, that is from 18 to 23 years age, from the present 6% to 10%. So they increased the age limit and they adapted the uh, liberty peoples to get educated. So the next thing is 11th commission is from 2007 to 2012. Here there is a wake up call announced for higher education. So there is a massive expansion in the uh, public and the private sector on the basis of initiation of newer university arisals and the colleges arisal. Here they established a new around 13 new central universities, 16 state level and 14 world class universities and 8 new IIT universities, 7 IIMS universities. So here it is a golden period for the education in the 11th 5 years plan. They have given a maximum new innovation and opportunity for more universities and colleges to get arised. So 12th plan is from 2012 to 2014. The Planning Commission has abolished in 2014 to whisper in the NITI Ayog. So here the plan has been explaining under RUSA Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. So here we have rated the colleges and we have given a grade for the colleges to have their autonomous status. So here the plan for the autonomous status and the upgradation of our colleges from affiliated to autonomous has been categorized. So the main purpose of autonomous colleges is to provide the quality education under their control with the enhanced and improvised syllabus. So next, we are going for our current scenario of higher education in India. So, what is the current scenario and what we are uh, carrying out in our daily activities in the education system? So, as if now we are always in an online education system, we are getting a proper online education management system for their improvement of the student as well as for the career improvement of us also. So now the current scenario of education system has increased 50 times from 20 in 1950 to 1993 in 2019. So the number of university has increased a lot. We have we have only 20 universities in 1950, but it has increased 50 times. That is 1993 universities are till 2019. So the sector boost of 50 central university we have 50 central universities and 409 state universities and 349 state private universities and 127 deemed universities and 95 institute of national importance. So it's all under the Act of Parliament, which is from MHRD. So Ministry of Health and Resource Development. Also, they have the in charge of. They have established the Act for the development of the institution and four institution which is established under the state legislation. So the number of colleges has been registered, which has been increased into 84 times as compared to the 1950. So there are 500 colleges in 1950, but now, to the growth of universities has increased as well as the colleges also increased. Now, currently we have 41,901 university as if now on March 31st, 2020. So, we have currently 41,901 colleges throughout the world, throughout the India for the higher education. So, it is a current ratio till 31st March 2020. So next, the current scenario of education in India. So as I said earlier, there are major categories of universities and university level institutions as central university, state university and deemed universities. So what is central university? A central university which is established only under the act of central government, they work and they will apply rules and regulations according to the act of central government. The state government has incorporated and established by the provisional or temporary act by the state government. So the private institutions are private universities are like the universities which are registered under the Societic Registration Act of 1860. They are they are they have to change according to the time being or the force enforced by the government or the public trust. So these companies or the institutions are can be registered only under the section 25 of the Company Act 1956. So deemed universities are called as commonly known as deemed to be university. So referred as a higher preferring institution which is declared by the central government, but they can't have an affiliated or colleges under the deemed university. So that is the main difference. So central university can give an affiliation as well as state universities, but the deemed universities cannot provide an affiliation or any under subcategory of colleges under the deemed university. So institution of national importance. So institution of national importance is basically declared for the uh, declaration of the research processes. The institution under the State Registration Act is an incorporated of State Registration Act. So next I have given you the main categories of universities and how they are separated. So As I said earlier, we have central, state, private, deemed and national importance. So central university will act under the rules and regulations of the parliament, which is under the MHRD. So they do not have affiliation colleges but provide degrees to courses offered at selected institutions. So the central universities will not provide any affiliation to the colleges. So as I said earlier, these universities can only provide the degree for the courses which are selected from the institutions. So the state university is a federal state registration. So they can provide courses offered at the affiliated colleges. So they'll also provide you the courses offered what we are offering from the affiliated colleges. So the private institutions is not legally permitted to establish affiliated college. So that they can't able to give affiliation to any other colleges, but the state institution can give affiliation to any other colleges. The central university cannot have, or they cannot able to give affiliation to any other colleges. So the deemed, as I said earlier, the deemed universities are the higher education which is under the MHRD, but they are not legally permitted to establish any affiliated college under the deemed university category. So under development of education, so a national important legislation or the universities are which can able to provide a skill development or a training program related courses. So next is the important institution dealing with higher education. So we have only three institutions which majorly deals with the higher education. So first thing is UGC. So this UGC is Universal Grant Commission, is established by the Act of Parliament for coordinating or the development of the university education. So they advises the government, central government and state government in the development and the measures and what are the steps to be taken and carried out for the higher education improvement. They also function as a regional office, and they have their regional office in various areas. So Bangalore, Bhopal, Delhi, Guwahati, Hyderabad, Kolkata and Pune. You may have the questions, where do you have the regional office of UGC? So we have regional offices in 7 areas, so which is located in Bangalore, then Bhopal, Delhi, Guwahati, Hyderabad, Kolkata and Pune. So next is the National Council of Educational Research and Training. So NCERT. So NCERT is basically located in the headquarters at Sri. So their main purpose is to advise the state and the central government regarding the academic related development in the school education. So UGC is basically based on the university education, but NCERT is basically measured on the initiative and coordinate the development for the school educations. So this NCERT is established in 1961. So next we have the IUCS. So it is inter-university centers. So here within the centers, they promote the research and the establish the autonomous inter-university centers. So they offer centers under this category for the research work and the technical development of the curriculum. So next I have given the objectives for setting up the inter-university center. So who can able to set the inter-university center and what is the eligibility criteria for setting the inter-university center? To provide the common advice or central services for the university. If I wanted to set up a inter-university center, if the education institution or organization which is suffering or which is not capable of constructing a large building, if they are not able to have, so who and what are the universities are eligible for setting up their inter-university centers? So first thing is the universities which are unable to set a well infrastructure for the education purpose or the services can request the help, or they can request the help from the IUCS for their higher education and centralized facilities. And the second thing is the universities who is offering a best teachers and the research facility across the country can get the IUCS help. So the research and the teaching community can get the help and the facility for comparatively for the higher education. So they have a nuclear research center. They provide the research facility and the offering for the development of their career in the research field. So then there are now we have the six IUCS functioning within our university system, that is, which is first one is located in Delhi and second one is in Pune for physics, astrophysics, and the third one is for scientific research in Indore, and the fourth one is in the Ahmedabad for library network, and the fifth one is in the Delhi for the education and communication, and the sixth one is in the Bangalore for accreditation council, NAAC. It is in the Bangalore. It is called the National Assessment and the Aggregation Council, and the last one is in the Kakinada. So Kakinada, we have the Inter University Center for Teaching Education. So next we have the Council for the Higher Education and Research. So we are we are given the main council for our higher education. So the first is Indian Council of Social Science Research, so which is in Delhi, which is established in 1967, which is based on the social science research work, and it provides the discipline for the research areas in the social science. So the Indian Council of Philosophical Research is basically based on the autonomous organization for promoting research, philosophy, and allied disciplines. So the project of history of Indian science, philosophy, and culture, which basically based on the study of interconnection between the science, philosophy, and this culture, has developed from the long history of Indian culture. So the next is the Indian Council of Historical Research, which is in the New Delhi, which is basically based on the Society Registration Act. So they provide a long and in-depth research-oriented studies on the historical inventions and the um, ancient Indian equipments also. So the National Council of Rural Institution, so it is located in the Hyderabad, which is basically fully funded by the central government institution, which headquarters is in the Hyderabad. So they also provide education for the rural peoples also. So next, topic 3. So topic 3 is a Oriental conventional and non-conventional learning process in India. So the method what we are used already is called as the Oriental method. There is no digital system or boards to write over anything. They'll experiment it practically. They have all their things orally. So here we are going to see what is Oriental learning program. So Oriental learning program in the ancient period is basically on two types, which is formal as well as in the informal way. So they are mainly teached or guided in homes, temples, and pathasalas, stores, and gurukulas. So here the teaching was largely based on the oral communication. What the teachers dictate, the student taught in the class, they'll practice it in the life and real-time environment. So the oral research institutions, there are 16 institutions throughout the throughout India. So they are like the maximum oral languages are um, Sanskrit, though we don't have any written script for Sanskrit, so everything is in the oral format. So they'll guide you the Sanskrit orally, philosophy and literature value of it. So Adyar Library is a library which is located in the Chennai for the oral learning process. So second library is, we have 16 libraries. Second library is Asiatic Society, which is by Sir William Jones. So he started a Asiatic Society. So it has been changed its name literally on several times in the several periods. So this library will taught you a oral way of teaching things as we get knowledge in the Gurukula period. So Bandarkar Oriental Research Institution, which is situated in Pune, and it always taught you the life and works of R.C. Bandarkar, and they have given you the scientific orientology in the India. So the next thing is Ganganath Jada Kendriya Samas, Samaskrita Vidyapita is a Ahmedabad University which is established in 1934. It was formerly known as D.N. Jada Research Institute. So they also taught you the Samaskrita as well as in the in-depth view of the Samskrita Vedas. So next, we have this Kupuswami Shastri Research Institution, which is located in the Madras, which is started in the memory of S. Kupuswami Shastri. He brings the journals and research work on the Oriental research. So next thing is Madras Sanskrit College, which is founded by V. Krishnaswamy. So this also taught the traditional method and the how they are taught their lessons in the ancient period through Gurukula and the various resources, what the method and how they are gain knowledges and how they purify their souls. So they taught the Vedas. So next, Mythic Society is in the Bangalore. So this is a purely historical center and will teach you the religion, philosophy, history, ethnology and the culture of the peoples and the ancient civilization of our country. So next we have our eighth is the Oriental Institution, which is located in Baroda. So they usually give you the manuscript of the printed text. So here you have the part of Sanskrit, which is main part of the central library. So they given you the oral series, which was in the period of AD of 1915. So our ninth library is the Oriental Manuscript Library, which is in the Trivandrum. So it is the Department of Government of Travancore. So they also given you 50,000 manuscript in Sanskrit, Malayalam and other languages. So it is publishing two journals on the two types of journals. So you may have the Oriental Manuscript Library list of journals and how they are publishing. So the Trivandrum is the only library which has 50,000 manuscripts in Sanskrit, Malayalam and other languages. So they occasionally provide two journals. So one is in the Sanskrit and other one is in the Malayalam. So the 10th honors Oriental Research Institution Tripadi. So this is basically came into existence in AD of 1941. So here the university is uh, started by Sri Venkateshwara University. The institution was hand over it to the government in 1956. So next we are going to see our 11th university is Oriental Research Institute in Mysore. This institution was started by the King Maharaja in the Mysore state. So this institution also provide you the books about the Sanskrit and they publish a lots of books in Kannada and Sanskrit and they given you a very old Oriental library publications for the observation. So Samskrita Academy Madras. So Samskrita Academy in Madras is basically a Senate hall of the old Senate building of the University of Madras by Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya. So here the well-known Kupuswami Shastri was chosen as the first president. So he was the first president in the Samskrita Academy. So Samskrita Shakitya Parishad, which was in the Kolkata. So here it was founded by tiny rented house. So first the library was in the tiny rented house. Now they have got their own spaces for three floor buildings. So they have a centralized learning and research area for the Sanskrit language. So our 14th one is the Government Sanskrit College, which is in the Kolkata. It is established by the Government of India, the East India Company who has established the college. They have the method and the Western method of learning in the college. So Saraswati Mahal Library, which is in Tanjore. So this library is established at the end of 16th century. They are fully named by the official name of Tanjore Maharaja. So the next and last is the Vishweshwaranand Vishwabandhu Institute of Sanskrit and Indological Studies. So this institution is a famous institution for the Sanskrit and Indological studies. So this institution mainly focus on the Indian logics and the formulas and the methods to implicit the formulas. So next we are going to see what is conventional learning. So conventional learning is basically what we are studying in the classes known as conventional learning. Here the learning is basically based on the basics of the traditional education. So here there is a face-to-face interaction. So the students get the knowledge only by the teachers what they taught. Here the students receive the knowledge passively. So here the teachers are active members. They get their knowledge only on the basis of the textbooks and the notes what provided in the classes. So here the students are trained and prepared according to the marks and examinations what they are going to write up in the end of the year. So the characteristics of conventional education, as I said earlier, it is a fixed time. So there is a fixed time. So as we are going for the colleges or the school, there is 9 to 3:30. So it is in the fixed time limit. There is no conventional in the, or there is no relaxation in the timing. You should go by 9 and 3. So there is a fixed time. There is a regular attendance as such like what we are doing in current situations. So conventional is basically like the education what we are taught in the schools and colleges. So fully we are focusing only on the syllabus and the textbooks what they are going to write for the examination. There is no learning observations, or they are not going to learn beyond their syllabus. So next one is non-conventional learning. So here the learning is not on the time. They can learn anytime, anywhere, like online teaching. So they don't have any fixed time to learn the subject or to gain the knowledge. It is purely based on skill and technical basis. So they can learn from anywhere at any time. It is basically like online education. So they have the time to learn. They have the time to analyze. They have the opportunity to gain knowledges from the very knowledge and the expertise from persons from various areas and various countries. So here we have improved the quality of education. Here we have the knowledge from various location and various areas. Here the knowledge gains are more basically on the professional and the development of the person. So here the education is basically for the unemployed youths. So our target group of peoples in the non-conventional educations are unemployed youths, school dropped out, underprivileged group, women and children, tribal and monetary minority peoples. This type of education is also for literacy people. So in the olden times of our state or a country, we had a method of teaching the aged peoples in the evening times or in their free times. They will educate the basic of language or the alphabets what we are using currently using. So we're going to teach them the basics of education, how to write their name. We want to tell them the basic calculation, basic characters in the language. So this type of education comes under non-conventional learning. So next we are going to see our next topic is professional, technical and skill-based education. So here our Indian education system is basically based on the MHRD pattern. So MHRD pattern was created in the September 26, 1985. So which was comes under the amendment of 174th amendment. So the main objectives of the ministry will be to implement the letter and spirit of education. So the education should be taught to the people who do not able to easily access the education. So it should be given to the rural people. They are not who are not able to learn in a regular basis. So they're paying special attention for the poor, weak peoples, so females who are not able to learn due to the gender equality, and the people from minority communities. So they provide many helps through the students through scholarship fundings for their studies and education. They provide a free education. They have enhanced the growth of the people, and they also enhanced the foreign government as well as the industries to enhance the education opportunity in our countries. So MHRD works through two departments, the Department of School Education and Literacy and the Department of Higher Education. So we have two departments in MHRD, that is school for school level and for higher education level. So here I have given you the structure of Indian's educational system. So we have the primary, then secondary, then higher secondary educations. So in higher educations, we have your basic degrees. So BSc, MSc, MPhil, and your doctorate degree in the normal grade. And you have the other hand, it is a professional degree. So engineering doctors and IT people, so those degrees considered as professional. And the technical courses are like ITI. Skill-based courses are after completing the ITI, they'll move on to the training institutions. So they work based on their working or the employing options. So next, here is the Department of Education. So Indian Council for Technical Education, Agriculture, Dental, Bar, Medical, Teaching Education, Pharmacy, Rehabilitation, Homeopathy, Nurse, Architecture, Medicine, Distance Education, and State Council. So um, we have almost around 10, 10 institutions under this category. 10, yeah, under this category, and you have a common categories like um, medicine, dental, which are belonging to the same category, medical, dental, and this is on under the medical category. So totally we have around 14 councils for the education purpose. So here we have the first council. So when it was established, the technical education was established for the development and the improvement in the field of technical courses like ITI diploma courses. It is established in 1987. The medical council is basically for the medical field entrance exams and the eligibility criteria. They'll form the eligibility criteria and the syllabus and the method of teaching and everything. It is formed from 1956 amendment in 1993. So the Indian Council for Agriculture is basically based on the development in the technical aspirants in the agriculture field and industry. So the next is teaching education, which it is basically based on the B.Ed educational sector development. Development. The dental is for dentist eligibility development. It is started in 1948. Established. The pharmacy is for medical and chemical area sectors. It is Act comes into act in 1948. The Indian Nursing Council is for nursing courses, eligibility, syllabus management, and the development criteria. It is from 1947. So next we have our eighth category, which is ninth, is Central Council for Homeopathy. It is for homeopathy doctors and for Indian medicines, for architect, for distant education, for rehabilitation centers, and for National Council for Rural Institutions. So it is for the people who are not able to get their education in their circumference. They have to travel from a long area. They don't have education sectors in their areas. So next, value and environmental education. So what is mean by value? The education should provide a value in personally, culturally. Then it has to give you a proper the value of education should be that it should provide a citizen who is really mean for the society. So here I have tell you what is the value. So value is they should provide a person with who is trustworthy, who is accountable, who is equally treat other genders. He should be follow equality. He should not see the peoples in the name of gender, community, or anything else. He should be loyal and he should be ideal to provide the judgment to the people. He should be transparent. He should show love and care not only with the family. He should have the uh, brotherhood from the society, people from country and outside of the country. So next we have the categories of valuation. So here the categories is personal values, social values, so spiritual values. Then we have the cultural values and moral values. So the education value should be you should have the social responsibilities. You should be uh, afraid of the spiritual values. You should know the value of the God and the other Atma and soul purity. He should have the personal values, discipline, then judgment, then lovability to others. He should be transparent. He should be loyal to himself. Then moral values. You should be a role model for the others who get in beyond him or who is following him as a ideal one for the upcoming level in the education. So cultural values, you should know the Indian civilization, you should know the culture, you should know the value of the generation, you should know the value of genetics from the family and the country. Then last one is the universal value. The universal value is you should know he should aware of the countries and what is the languages, and he should know what is the benefit from this country and how they are great from others and how they are different from the other countries and what is the major importance from that country. So next we are going to see the values. As I said earlier, there should be a flexibility, honesty, respect, integrity, commitment, open-minded. He should be open-minded, individuality. If some, what do you mean by open-minded? If someone says a suggestion or a idea in some problems or an issue, he should able to take that ideas and he should analyze and he should make it into a valuable outcome. So next thing is policies, governance and administration. So as I said earlier, the government has issued many policies under the articles. So here we have the 448 articles in 25 parts and 12 schedules and 104 amendment. So here in India we has 395 articles in 22 parts and 8 schedules. So we will discuss the what are the amendments and articles passed in India. So Indian Constitution Committee chaired by Dr. Ambedkar has signed a amendment by Dr. Rajendra Prasad on November 26, 1947. So he has signed an amendment and he has issued that the authority for the governance which was authorized by the people of India. So our assembly accepted these amendment on 26 November 1947 and comes to force in 26 January 1950. So that 26th January was chosen to be the commemorate the Purna Swaraj Declaration of the Independence of 1930. So our way of constitution was formed by the borrowing constitution from various countries. So various countries in the world. So our constitution is a borrowed constitution from various countries from their various major contributions. So our constitution amendment is called as the beautiful patchwork. So we have patched the various good things from various country. So make it as a fulfill amendment. So next, here we have the borrowed amendments and rights from various country. We have borrowed the fundamental rights from USA, parliamentary system of government from UK, directive principles of state policy from Ireland, and so on. So we have borrowed lots of things and make our constitution rights, which is called as our constitution right framework is called as a beautiful patchwork. So here we have given you the articles and what is the rights. So just go through it. We have a maximum 395 rights. So we have splitted it into 22. As I said earlier, we have given which article is basically based on which fundamental rights. So mainly we have the six fundamental rights. So our government has the federal system. So federal system is some rules and declarations are made by the state government and some rules are made by the central government. But commonly, few amendments should be passed only with the coordination and collaboration from the state and the central government. So maintenance of law and order and lay tax, borrow money, take land for the public use, and everything should be coordinated by the state as well as from the central government. So our home ministry has integrated with 150 states into the Union of India, which is done by the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, the Iron Man of India. So the Indian setup is most probably a semi-federal act. So the component of the Indian Union cannot be used freedomly with the we don't have a freedom to utilize everything because most of the uh, most of your rules and act and governance are passed in the form of federal government. So it is we can't able to use it freely, last like in the USA. So next we have the territory of unions. So I have given you the territories of union. So we have 28 states and 7 union territories and 1 national capital territories. So by the end of 1956, we have splitted the country according to their language used on the country and the states. So we have divided the states on the based on their languages. So here we have given the categories and when they have passed the monument for the declaration. So in the State Recognition Act in 1956 was passed by the Andhra, Kerala formed basic of the Andhra first state. So Bombay reorganization and Punjab reorganization and Mysore as well as the state of Mizoram, the state of Arunachal Pradesh based on their language we have split out the state reorganization. So next, so we have the fundamental rights. Basically, we have 7 rights, but now we are currently having only 6 rights. We have removed a right called the right to proper property. It is removed in the later. So we have added the property in the sixth fundamental right. So the right to equality, right to freedom, right against the exploitation, right freedom of religion, cultural and the educational rights, rights to the constitutional remedies. So here we have the 6 major fundamental rights. So I have given you the rights according to their articles. So the right to equality is from the articles 14 to 18 is called as the right to equality. So there should be a equality in law and the law should be equal to work as well as for the higher peoples. There should not be any variation in the judgment or the law provided for the peoples. So there should not be a corruption or the unwanted act in the judgment of the law. So there should not be any part which is not being revised or investigated. So the equality of the option is a matter of public employment. So there should be a public involvement in the revision of law and issuing of the law. There should be equal in the religion, state, caste, sex as well as in the place of birth. So next, a law will be right to freedom. So this is from Article 19 to 22. Here we have the first Article 19. It guarantees the situation of India. So this law will provide a guaranteed situation India in 6 fundamental freedoms. So we can speak anytime and anywhere is a freedom and expression. What we can able to talk about a particular issue or a problem in the country or anywhere else. So we can assemble anywhere regarding the problem to discuss or coordinate. So we can form an association. So we can form a movement or a political party to against the corruption or against the invalid action by the government or the peoples. So the freedom of residence settlement. So anyone can settle anywhere in India, throughout India. Anyone can settle from one state to another state. Freedom of profession, occupation, and trade and business. So anyone can work in any position, place, and they can do any kind of work, any kind of business. So our next articles is from 20. It is know that every person should have his respect for convenience and offense. So no one should make an offense or crime on the other people's. So the protection of life and personal liberties, there should be a protection based on their life and the education liberties. So there should be a right for education so everyone can learn. So education is for everyone, not for a particular community or a person. So everyone has the right to learn for their career. So there should not be arrest against the people who is talking, or they should have a first inquiry on the corruption or the issues. So next is our article against exploitation is the article number 23 and 24. So traffic in the human being and forced labor. So there should not be any harassment or the fighting against the people in the public or in the organizational areas. So the employment of the children should be stopped in the countries. There should not be a child labor in any industry. So this is the main right in the exploitation, article 23 and 24. So next we have our article from 25 to 28, what is called as the freedom to religion. So every person is equal in before law. So everyone should be able to have their own religion, have their own culture, and have able to exhibit their religious concept throughout the country. So there should be a freedom in the profession and the practice and the propagation of the religion. They can able to do their rituals according to their religious interest. So there should be a freedom in the religious practicing. So they should not be forced to convert into any other religions. So they have their own equal individuality to practice their religious concept. They can able to have the attention of their religious ceremonies. There should not be any restrictions in the practicing of religious concept or ceremony in the prayers or in the temples or in the church or mosque. So everyone has the freedom to pray or follow their religious. So next comes our article 29 to 30. So here is the articles. So article number 29 and 30 and 31 belongs to the cultural and educational rights. So first thing is protection of interest of minorities. So education is common for all. There is no majority or minority community. So even the peoples from the minority community can able to learn. So it should provide a right for the people to learn. So next is right for minority to establish administration. So the minority people can also establish their own educational institution for the educational purpose. So they have the right to start their institution. They can able to provide the education for the other community peoples also. So this article is omitted by the 44th Amendment Act. So next thing is article number 32 to 35. So this article is basically based on the constitutional remedies. So here is the right to move Supreme Court. So here we have the remedy. If you are not satisfied with the cases from the uh, Supreme Court to High Court, and if you are not satisfied with the High Court, you can move for the Supreme Court, and you can able to use the power of the Parliament to modify the rules and rights. So if there is a restriction on the right in the marital law, in the force in any areas, you can able to modify it. So there is a registration assembly will give an effect for the provision and the suggestion from the people to rewrite it or reconstruct it. So next we have our next one. What is right? So right is nothing but a written issued by the Supreme Government. So it is a written order issued from the Supreme Court for the protection of the fundamental rights for the citizen from the no violence. So here we have the five kinds of rights. So first we have our rights called certiorari. So next we are going to see what is right. So right is a written order from the Supreme Court. So here we have five rights which is against the fundamental rights of citizen from the violence. So the first one is certiorari. And certiorari is the right which is basically the case or a crime which is undertaken by the lower court is reviewed by the higher court for the judgment. And the next thing is prohibition. So prohibition is the sales or the production of a not valid product in the society. So the fourth is mandamus. The mandamus is the order or the command which is passed by the higher court that should be followed by the lower court without any restriction or without any objection. So next one is Quaranto. Quaranto is basically a warranty order for which the person has the warrant to use the office or the work or the manufacturing company or what for the purpose for which he has been arrested. So there is a warranto that if he is going to be get arrested, there is a warranto that he is a person who has did a crime or a crime under this criteria. So habeas corpus is basically a arrest warrant which is for the person who is has to be punished without any um, without any weapons or without any protection. He has to be produced under the court or law without any release options. So next we have the 11 fundamental duties, which is based on the 51A. So these duties is we have to provide the respect and ideals for the national flag and national anthem. We should not disrespect our national flag or national anthem anywhere for any situation. So we should be noble ideal for the national strength of the national struggle for the freedom. So we should not upload or protest the sovereignty against the unity or the integrity of India. So we should not depend the country and render the national services when called upon to do so. So we should not promote harmony, a spirit of a common brotherhood. So we should always able to promote the brotherhood among the people. We should not able to do anything against the act. So we should able to value and preserve the rich heritage and the ancient precious things of of our country. We should able to protect and improve the national environment, including the forests, lakes, rivers. We should not damage the biodiversity at any cost. We should develop a scientific temper and humanity among the spirit of the peoples and inequality. We should safeguard the public property. We should not damage any public properties at any case. We should always be a proper individual to the society, and there should not be anyone who has to be labor employed in the age of 6 to 14. So here as the president, and what is the eligibility, and how is his salary, and what are the powers of president. So you may have a common questions from this type. So the president is the head of a union executive standard. So the president is elected by the indirect election, that is by the electoral college in the accordance with the system of proposal representation by a single referable vote. So he is elected only through a single referable vote. His electoral college comprises of elected members of both the houses of the parliament. So the elected member from the state legislative assembly. The eligibility is you should be a citizen of India. You should have completed 35 years. You should not have any cases. He should not work in any government or central government process within 5 years. He should be able to be elected to the Lok Sabha. So the office of the president is 5 years from the date of his he is elected. So he can be re-elected if there is no bar on the number of times for which a president can become. So his registration is in the return which is addressed to the Vice Principal of India. His removal by impeachment. So the president can get a monthly salary of 5 lakh apart from the official residence. So his residence and the staying is free of cost, and he can able to get a 5,000. He also get the annual pension if he is re-elected, if he is not re-elected as a president. So the powers of president. So he has some emergency powers. He can able to decline the proclamation of emergency is the president can declare the last for the 6 months by passing each resolvement by the majority. So he can proclaim a state emergency. So by the article of 356 to the breakdown of the ministry or by the ruling party, he can able to declare the rule of the government to be taken by the imposed to the 2 month initially. So he can declare a financial emergency under the Act of 360. He has some executive powers. So he has the administrative power, military power, legislative power, and judicial power. So in case of administration power, he can execute the law administration department of the government. He can remove a person or he can appoint a person. So in the military, he can command all the forces, and he can also make a declaration or announcement for the wars. So legislative power, he can able to assign or unassign the governments. So as come for the judicial power, he can stop the punishment of any person at any time in the case of any crime. So here I have given the same powers in the orderly form. So what are the powers he gets, and what is the um, orders he can able to issue, and who the person he can appoint, and who the person he cannot appoint. The next thing is the Union Council of Minister. The Prime Minister is called as the Union Council of Minister, and um, he is the person who is elected from a member of either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. He should be elected member from either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. So he is the chairman of the Niti Ayog, then National Development Council, National Integration Council, Interstate Council, and the National Water Resource Council. So he has the right to do all the. He is the person who advises the president in the for emergency period and in the appointment of the persons. So here the power of the prime minister. So he can elect the head of country. He can leader of the majority party, and he is the leading person of the people parliament. He can advise the president. So as I said earlier, he can monitor all over all the works of the country. So next, this is the government of India, as I said earlier. So executive, legislative of parliament, so judiciary. So here is the responsibilities. And the next, we have the union legislative. So legislator is here we have the three persons, that is President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha has 250 members and Lok Sabha has 552 members. So here you have 12 nominated members and 238 members. Then the representatives of the state and unit and UT. So but in the Lok Sabha it is 552 members. So here not more than 530 representatives of the state. So here have two nominated Anglo-Indian. We should not have more than two nominated Anglo-Indians in the Lok Sabha, and not more than 20 representatives from the United Territories. So next we have the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So period of Lok Sabha can be 5 years and Rajya Sabha is 6 years. So I have given you the details and the men who is over here. So the next we are going for the state executive. So here we are the ministers and secretary and additional powers. So the Supreme Court. So first is the Supreme Court, then the High Court and the Metropolitan Court, District Courts, Civil Court, Criminal, and we have the separate sectors in the court sectors also. And next we are going for the judiciary, Supreme Court and High Court. High Court, what is the tender and what is the age of attaining and what are the things that is legal in the High Court as well as in the Supreme Court. Next, I have given you the powers of judicial. So Supreme Court is the decision and the binding for all the courts. He can transfer the cases from High Court judges. So he can call the cases from lower court judges. So he can transfer from one High Court to the other High Court. The High Court can approve from lower courts, has the power to issue the fundamental rights related to the written comments and deals with the cases of within the state jurisdiction, and he can supervise and control all the lower courts, the district court, so that area court and cases can be judgmented. So next we have some important words and topics what we are using in our what we are always using in our political words or in the judicial area. So I have given you some words. Vote on account. So this is a political term or governmental term what we are using. So I have given you some terms here. You may have 1 mark in these terms. So first thing is vote on account. Second thing is lambda government. The third thing is left party. And the fourth one is right party, centralist party, cut motion. Then we have our zero hour, starred question, unstarred question, guillotine, filibuster, right. So here I am going to tell you what are the words and what is the appropriate meaning for the words here. First we are going for these some technical words. What I said earlier is the lamb duck government. So lambda government is the government which is not working it properly. We want to dismiss the government, but unfortunately we can't able to dismiss the government at uncertain of point. So vote on account. So we have the other terms. What is called as vote on account. It is passed without discussion or the pending final approval by the parliament if the money is required urgently. So vote on account is it is passed or the order which is given by the government in the pending final approval. Without the final approval, without waiting for the pending of the final approval, they passed by the parliament if there is some money required or in the case of urgency of money. So next thing is lame duck government. So lame duck government is it is the government which is no worth or it has no authority to run the government, but still we are making the government which is asked by the president so as to continue till the alternative government will rises. So the next thing is the right party. Right party is those which adopt a politically converge ideology. They have the same ideology as the political parties. Like if you have BJP, Sivasena, they are belonging to the same category of ideology. So these parties are called right parties. Left parties are called like the parties which adopt the different ideologies. They don't have a same ideology or same thing. They'll follow different ideologies. Like for example, CPI and CPIM and RSP. So centralized parties are like the political parties. We are the media between they are the persons who can add the ideology of the left party as well as the right party. So next is cut motion, the motion which is moved as the effect or the cut in the annual budget. So if there is an insignificant cut is proposed known as the token cut motions, it is a great political significance because it is carried out throughout the parliament. A government is under a resign as a consequence. So next is 0 hour, the time during parliamentary proceeding in the day when any matter of urgent national importance without any prior notice. So this occurs in the parliament meeting. So if there is any emergency to gather the meeting, they'll gather the meeting without any prior announcement. They have to gather and assemble for the meeting. So start questions is those answers to which the question given orally by the minister concerned in it. So stat questions are those answers which is given orally by the minister. So unstat questions are the answers which is the written answers from the parliament by the ministers. So stat is the oral answer of the question by the ministers, and the unstat is the written answer for the question by the parliament by the ministers. So next thing is guillotine is the motion or it is passed without any discussion on it in the parliament. So it is an urgent and emergency message or the command which is passed from the parliament without any prior meeting or discussion in the parliament meeting. So filibuster is in order to block the passage of a bill in the parliament makes a long speech just because voting is going to take place. The team has a British origin. Such a person and a speech both are referred to as billbusters. So if there is as I said earlier in the simple words, if there is a bending in the bill passing in the parliament, or if there is not yet signed amendments in the parliament, so that person is said to be a billbuster. So whip. So whip is related to a presence and the conduct of members of particular party in the parliament. So he is supposed to ensure their presence and the voting on the particular day and in a particular manner. So all the party MPs are sometimes known as whips. So thank you everyone. I once again wanted to thank everyone who is with us for the long journey of our course. We thought we have given you the best of the course with the proper materials we have provided you. I thought so, and we wanted to be thankful for you, for everyone who has registered and supported us through the long journey. Without your presence or your support, we can't able to travel this, or we can't able to complete this program with the successful one. And once again I wanted to ask sorry for everyone for the delay of the course, because everyone wanted to get an elaborate and detailed notes on each topic. It takes us a long time to complete our course. So sorry once again for delay on the courses. So we wanted to give you the best, and we wanted to make you to clear your examination. So that's why we have taken a long time for preparation, and each preparation has taken us for more than 2 to 3 days for each topic. So that's why it has made us a long journey on this topic. So we wanted to give you our best, and we wanted to make it to clear, and we wanted to understand each and every concept. That's why I have taken a long time. So once again, I thank everyone who has traveled with us for this long journey. If you have any doubts or query, you just WhatsApp to me. Don't hesitate to WhatsApp. Even if the course has completed, and even if you have completed everything, there is no issues. You can call us. You can ask your doubts. We will ready to clear your doubts. So I wanted to get your feedback. I'll send you a feedback form. You just tell me your suggestions. If there is any suggestions or correction, we will be very happy to get it in the next batch. So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for your long journey. So I once again wanted to wish you our best luck for your examination. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Let me let me get back to you in some other nice session or in the journey if I get a chance to meet you again. Thank you.